Imagine a world where love bends to greed, where the bonds of marriage are just a thin layer over darker impulses. Our story plunges into the depths of a relationship in which every gesture, every whisper hides a secret deeper than the simple act of betrayal. Carlos was no ordinary man. He was an elegant predator, dressed in tailored suits, with a smile capable of melting ice and breaking down barriers. His wife, Helena, a woman of classic beauty and sharp intelligence, seemed to be the perfect complement in this social theater of appearances. But behind this impeccable facade, a plan was unfolding. A plan as audacious as it was immoral. Carlos saw beyond the obvious. He saw people as pieces on a board where money was the only true king. Mariana would be his trump card, a woman whom society would judge, but whom he saw as the perfect instrument for his darkest desires. Neither victim nor villain, just another piece in this complex mesh of ambition and desire. What was to come would be more than a simple betrayal. It was a declaration of war against traditional values, a challenge to the moral limits that imprison the weak. Get ready for a journey in which nothing is as it seems. Buenos Aires, 2018. The city pulsed with a complex energy, where tradition and ambition danced a dangerous choreography. Carlos Martínez was not just another businessman. He was an elegant predator who used the social machine as a second skin. His financial empire was built on subtle layers of influence. Born into a traditional San Isidro family, Carlos learned from an early age that power wasn't only obtained with money, but with strategic connections. His offices in the financial heart of Puerto Madero were a sanctuary for quiet negotiations, where deals were closed with a handshake and a whiskey. Helena, his wife, represented the good side of this marriage of appearances. The daughter of a respected judge and a high society lady, she carried the DNA of the Buenos Aires elite in her every gesture. Her green eyes, inherited from European ancestors, had a calculated sparkle that intimidated and charmed at the same time. Her apartment in the Recoleta neighborhood was more than a residence. It was a living museum of her social rise. Paintings by contemporary Argentine artists, European crystal, rare porcelain. Each object told a story of success and power. Carlos knew that his marriage to Helena was a strategic alliance. She maintained her impeccable image, and he expanded his business. The monthly dinners brought together the cream of Argentine society, politicians, businessmen, judges. Helena circulated among the guests as an almost diplomatic hostess, pouring French champagne and orchestrating conversations that kept her status intact. But Charles was no longer satisfied with this predictable life. His ambition was a hungry animal that needed new territory to conquer. Mariana represented that new frontier. She worked as a secretary in one of Charles's offices on the 10th floor of a commercial building in Puerto Madero. Chubby, of humble origins, born in the suburbs of Quilmes, she had a burning desire for transformation in her eyes. Her parents were simple workers. Her father, a truck driver. Her mother, a seamstress. Mariana studied at night, had graduated as an administrative assistant with a partial scholarship, and now dreamed of something beyond this bureaucratic job. The first meeting between Carlos and Mariana was no accident. It was a meticulous architecture of seduction and interest. A coffee on a Thursday afternoon in a discreet restaurant far from Helena's social gaze. Carlos watched her like a hunter studies his prey. He knew that Mariana had something that fascinated him, not traditional beauty, but an energy of transformation. She represented the possibility of reinvention, something that his life of protocol had stifled. Mariana wore a discreet but elegant dress. Her eyes shone with an intelligence that went beyond her appearance. It didn't take long for Carlos to realize that she wouldn't just be another conquest, but an ally in his complex plan. At that moment, a plot began that would go far beyond a simple extramarital affair. It was the start of a personal revolution in which every move would be calculated like a chess piece. Traditional Buenos Aires had no idea what was coming. Buenos Aires was trembling behind the scenes of a plot that few understood. Carlos Martínez had turned his relationship with Mariana into a meticulous project of manipulation and ambition. The meetings, initially discreet, became surprisingly complex. Every moment with Mariana was not just an intimate encounter, but an ingenious architecture of interests. Carlos knew exactly what he wanted: to use Mariana's social vulnerability as a tool for his darker plans. Mariana, initially dazzled by the attention of a powerful man, didn't realize that she was just a piece in a much bigger game. Carlos gave her strategic gifts: a dress here, a specialization course there. Each gift was accompanied by a subtle message: you can be more than you are now. The meetings took place in discreet hotels in Puerto Madero, away from prying eyes. Carlos always chose places where he could control every detail, every movement. Mariana felt progressively seduced not only by the man, but also by the possibility of social advancement that he represented. Helena, apparently oblivious, continued with her impeccable social life. Dinners, charity events, art exhibitions. Her routine was a perfect mask for the silent erosion of her marriage. Carlos's plan was complex. He saw Mariana not just as a lover, but as an instrument for a financial transaction that could completely change his life. He knew that his wife Helena would never accept being publicly humiliated, and this certainty was his main weapon. Mariana began to realize that she was being shaped. Carlos encouraged her to take courses, to dress differently, to think strategically. It was as if he was preparing her for something far beyond an extramarital relationship. Intimate encounters always had a purpose beyond desire. Carlos questioned her about details of her life, her family, building up a meticulous profile. Mariana was releasing every piece of her story without realizing that she was being studied as a project. The city of Buenos Aires continued its relentless routine. While politicians negotiated behind the scenes, while the stock market rose and fell, Carlos planned his personal revolution. A crucial detail was beginning to emerge. Mariana would not just be a lover, but the key to a plan that could destroy or save Carlos's financial empire. Helena, with her unwavering elegance, continued to organize charity events, completely oblivious to the coming storm. Her high heels echoed through the corridors of her social life, a music that masked the silence of a marriage that was dissolving between the lines. Carlos smiled. Everything was going exactly according to plan. Betrayal had become something much bigger than simple infidelity. It was a silent war in which every move would be decisive, and the city of Buenos Aires would only be a stage for what was to come. Buenos Aires was like a pressure cooker about to explode. The silence that enveloped the lives of Carlos, Helena, and Mariana was about to be shattered in a devastating way. The first crack in the marriage appeared during a charity dinner at the Teatro Colón. Helena, always elegant in her champagne-colored Chanel dress, noticed something different in Carlos's eyes. It was no longer that sparkle of complicity, but a calculated emptiness. Mariana had completely transformed. The courses paid for by Carlos, the new clothes, the new haircut, everything indicated a planned metamorphosis. She was no longer the shy secretary of her first encounters. Now she walked around with a confidence that frightened. The details of the betrayal began to accumulate like evidence in a silent courtroom. Helena discovered the first clues in a cell phone left carelessly on Carlos's desk. Messages, photos, appointment books, a mosaic of betrayal that went far beyond a simple extramarital affair. Carlos had underestimated one crucial detail: Helena's intelligence. She would not be a passive wife. willing to accept humiliation in silence. He began his own investigation, using discreet contacts in Buenos Aires, lawyers, and private investigators. Mariana, for her part, discovered that she was just another piece in Carlos's complex game. The investments, the promises, everything seemed to be part of a bigger plan. She realized that her transformation came at a price, and that price would be too high to bear. The final confrontation took place on a sunny Sunday in December. The Martínez residence in San Isidro, normally a symbol of peace and status, became a silent battlefield. Helena revealed all the details she had discovered. She didn't cry, she didn't shout. Her method was much sharper. Every word was like a precise blade. Unraveling layers of lies accumulated over the years, Carlos tried to negotiate, using his traditional porteño eloquence. But this time, his words seemed empty, without the convincing power of before. Mariana, called to testify, revealed documents proving illegal financial schemes. The Martínez family, built up as an empire of appearances, collapsed in a matter of hours. Lawyers were brought in, accounts were blocked, reputations were destroyed. What was most impressive was Mariana's transformation. She was no longer the victim, but a strategist who had learned the games of power from Carlos himself. Her eyes were not shining with revenge, but with the satisfaction of someone who has finally understood the rules of the game. Buenos Aires was buzzing. The halls of the elite shook with the details of the scandal. An apparently perfect marriage dissolved like sugar in water, revealing all its contradictions. Helena decided not to be the traditional betrayed wife. She would sue Carlos, bring to light all the details of his fraudulent life. Mariana would be her main witness, turning what would have been a story of betrayal into a story of justice. Carlos's empire collapsed not in a single blow, but in a series of strategic revelations. Every lie, every secret agreement came to light like waves, destroying a fortress built on sand. The city of Buenos Aires watched in fascination as another myth of the Buenos Aires elite crumbled, a drama that showed that power and money can't always hide the truth. The game had changed, and no one was going to get away with it. Buenos Aires held deeper secrets than anyone could have imagined. The city, with its elegant avenues and historic cafes, was only the surface of a much more complex reality. Mariana immersed herself in an investigation that went far beyond her personal history. Through discreet contacts in different sectors, from employees to former colleagues, she began to uncover the true scale of Carlos Martínez's empire. The first documents revealed a network of corruption that stretched throughout Latin America. Carlos was not just an Argentine businessman, but part of an international consortium that manipulated tenders, diverted public funds, and controlled strategic trade routes. His office in Puerto Madero was more than a business center. It was the headquarters of complex financial operations, coded spreadsheets, international transfers, shell companies in tax havens. Each file was a piece of a criminal puzzle. The most scandalous connection had to do with a money laundering scheme that linked Argentine companies to international trafficking networks. Carlos was not just a corrupt businessman. He was a high-ranking operator in a meticulously constructed criminal system. His contacts included politicians from different parties, strategically placed judges, and businessmen who controlled key sectors of the Argentine economy. A network so complex that any false move could trigger unpredictable consequences. Helena, using her own contacts, began to map out this criminal network. Her family background, the daughter of a respected judge and a socialite with political connections, gave her a unique perspective. She wouldn't just be a betrayed wife, but a silent strategist. What was most impressive was the capillarity of the plot. It wasn't just about local corruption, but an international system involving trade routes between Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and connections in the Caribbean and Europe. Mariana discovered something even more explosive. Carlos kept a series of secret documents in a safe on a property on the outskirts of Buenos Aires. These documents could not only destroy his career, but also bring down entire government institutions. The young woman began to prepare her strategy. Every move would be calculated. Every revelation would be a surgical strike on Carlos's empire. Buenos Aires was like a pressure cooker. The city's elite sensed that something was about to happen, even if they didn't know exactly what. Carlos continued with his relentless routine, completely unaware that his downfall was being meticulously planned. Every meeting, every negotiation would be his last move in a game he had no idea he was losing. The real battle was about to begin, and no one was prepared for what was to come. Buenos Aires seemed like a stage where destinies intertwined in a complex dance of secrets and revelations. What was once just a story of betrayal became an epic of generational revenge. Mariana discovered the most shocking truth of her existence. Her real father was not the humble truck driver who raised her, but Roberto Sandoval, a powerful Argentine businessman whom Carlos had destroyed years before in a ruthless negotiation. Roberto Sandoval was a name that sent shivers down the spines of Buenos Aires elite. A businessman in the logistics and transportation sector who had built an empire in the 1980s and 1990s. Carlos Martínez had not only defeated him in business, but had also bankrupted him, destroyed his reputation, and forced him into exile. The story was deeper than it seemed. Sandoval had married Mariana's biological mother, a brilliant young lawyer who died in mysterious circumstances shortly after giving birth. Carlos had a direct involvement in this family tragedy, something that would be revealed in the following chapters. Helena, using her legal contacts, began to unearth documents linking Carlos to a network of crimes dating back more than 2 decades. Each piece of paper, each file, was a piece of a mosaic of corruption that went far beyond a simple case of infidelity. The documents revealed a complex network: embezzlement of public funds, manipulation of public tenders, international money laundering, connections with criminal networks in Uruguay and Paraguay. Mariana realized that her whole life had been an elaborate revenge plan. It was no coincidence that she had been hired at Carlos's office. Her every move had been meticulously planned to get close to the man who had destroyed her family. The young woman had devastating evidence: compromising tapes, bank records, records of illegal communications, and evidence of tax crimes. Carlos continued to ignore the coming storm. His meetings with politicians and businessmen followed a relentless routine, without realizing that each step took him closer to the abyss. Helena became the silent architect of this revenge. Her sadness at the betrayal became a calculated strategy of destruction. She would not only be the betrayed wife, but the executor of a justice that had been decades in the making. The most surprising thing was the family connection that no one expected. Mariana was not just a lover or an avenger. She was the heir to an empire that Carlos had destroyed and was now about to restore. Buenos Aires breathed expectation. The city's elite sensed that something monumental was about to happen. The elegant halls of Recoleta and Puerto Madero trembled with anticipation of what was to come. Carlos Martínez had built an empire on lies. And lies, as everyone knows, have short legs. The real battle was about to begin, and no one would come out unscathed. Pishoka, day chosen, was no coincidence. A sunny Thursday in December, when Buenos Aires is in the grip of an intense and relentless summer. The location, the Martínez mansion in San Isidro, a territory that would become a battlefield. Helena had orchestrated every detail with the precision of a general. Lawyers, private investigators, and strategic contacts were prepared like chess pieces. Carlos had no idea of the storm that was about to hit his life. Mariana arrived first, dressed not like a seduced lover, but like a strategist. A tailored suit, discreet but powerful, revealed her transformation. In her eyes, the determination of someone who knows every secret, every move. Carlos entered the house, ignoring the first signs. His Italian suit, always impeccable, would be his last armor against what was to come. Helena was waiting for him in the main hall with a glass of whiskey in her hand, the same one she always served at their business dinners. "Sit down, Charles," said Helena, her precise voice cutting. Through the silence, the confrontation would be surgical. Helena revealed documents that proved not just a personal betrayal, but a criminal plot that went far beyond a simple extramarital affair. Every piece of paper, every bank record was a stab to Carlos's reputation. Mariana brought the final bombshell, documents proving Carlos' connection to the death of his biological father, Roberto Sandoval. An elaborate plot of family destruction that went back decades. Carlos tried to negotiate, to use his traditional eloquence. But now his words sounded empty, without the convincing power of before. Each argument was immediately deconstructed by Helena and Mariana. The scene was cinematic. Three people, decades of secrets, an empire about to collapse. Helena didn't just want a divorce. She wanted the complete destruction of Carlos's empire. Every penny, every property, every connection would be publicly exposed. Mariana represented more than revenge. She was poetic justice personified. Her aim was not to destroy, but to reveal the truth in all its brutality. The climax would not be a scream, but a deafening silence. Carlos realized that he had lost. Not just his marriage, not just his business. He had lost his identity, his social mask built up over decades. Documents were handed over to the public prosecutor's office. International investigations were launched. Carlos Martínez's empire would crumble not in days, but in hours. Buenos Aires watched in amazement. Another myth of the Buenos Aires elite was crumbling, not because of a coup, but because of a strategy, calculated to the millimeter. Betrayal had become something much bigger than infidelity. It was the denunciation of a rotten system, built on lies and unbridled ambition. Carlos Martínez would be just another cautionary tale, proof that power cannot always hide the truth. The confrontation was over, and no one would come out the same. Buenos Aires, January 2025. The city continued its relentless dance, indifferent to the fall of another of its false idols. Carlos Martínez, once an untouchable symbol of power and influence, had become an example of corruption and unbridled ambition. Helena Martínez would no longer be defined by her role as a betrayed wife. At the age of 40, she turned her personal drama into a social mission. Using her network of contacts and legal expertise, she created an organization that investigated cases of corporate corruption. Her office in Recoleta became a focal point for denunciations against businessmen who manipulated the system. Each case, each investigation was an extension of her own personal battle against Carlos. The physical and emotional transformation was impressive. She lost 12 kilos, got a modern haircut, and started wearing suits instead of dresses. Her image was now one of power and determination, no longer one of fragility. Mariana Sandoval discovered that revenge was a dish to be eaten cold, but justice was a feast that fed the soul. She founded the Sandoval Institute for Entrepreneurial Development, aimed at supporting young entrepreneurs from poor backgrounds. Its programs offered not only financial resources, but also strategic guidance. Each beneficiary was a silent response to the system that tried to oppress her. Her personal story of self-improvement inspired hundreds of young Argentinians. The Martinez case caused a real revolution in Argentine business circles. Investigations followed, revealing a complex network of corruption that went far beyond a single businessman. Government institutions were forced to review their processes. Companies began to apply stricter codes of ethics. Carlos's fall served as a wake-up call for a whole generation of businessmen. What began as a story of personal betrayal became a movement for social transformation. Helena and Mariana proved that two determined women can dismantle empires built on lies. Their stories circulated through the cafes, universities, and business circles of Buenos Aires, not as a scandal, but as an example of resistance and integrity.